Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Earwax. It's Colin, and it's time for a review of the debut album from Animal Collective side project Croz Boyce, Croz Boyce. So this is the first full-length LP from the side project of Avey Tare and Geologist of Animal Collective, and it's an interesting album. I'm just gonna start with that. It's a very interesting album, and yeah, if you're not super familiar with Animal Collective, definitely give them a listen. They're one of my favorite like psych pop groups of all time. Merriweather Post Pavilion is an undisputed masterpiece, but I do also think that the two albums that anchor that, Strawberry Jam and Centipede Hurts, are both fantastic as well. And they've had a lot of other really good stuff throughout their career. They've been around for a long time. At least Avey Tare and Panda Bear have been making music as Animal Collective since like the late 90s, I want to say, early 2000s. And yeah, always been an interesting project. The members have also gone off and done other stuff. Like Avey Tare has a pretty eclectic solo career, and Geologist just dropped, I don't know if it's his first solo album, but it's the first one I listened to, called Can I Get a Pack of Camel Lights, earlier this year, and it's actually a really fun album. I definitely recommend to check that out if you haven't yet. So when I heard that Avey Tare and Geologist were doing a side project, I was very intrigued. And I kind of went into this pretty blind. Like I did very intentionally try to stay out of as much sort of like media follow up to this as I could. I didn't listen to any of the singles. I didn't do any of the listening parties that they did, although I was tempted. And part of what was so intriguing about this album was one of the like primary pre-listening experiences you could do was a series of listening parties slash hikes. So they announced like a bunch of different trails all over the country, where if you go and like went with a group, someone there would, I guess, have the album. Again, I didn't look super deep into it and listen to it like as you hiked. Which after hearing this album makes a lot of sense. So again, yeah, Avey Tare, he's always been kind of like the main driving force behind Animal Collective, playing guitar, doing vocals, doing a handful of other things. Like he's a pretty talented multi-instrumentalist. And Geologist has always kind of been behind the keyboard, behind the synthesizer, the sampling, like really one of the more driving electronic forces of the group. So it was very interesting to hear what these two sort of like specialists within their own group decided to create together without Deacon or Panda Bear. And I gotta say, it's an interesting album. So you've got the credits on this album are Avey Tare on guitar and then Geologist on electronics. I think is how they credit it. And it's a purely instrumental album. So there's no vocals here, which definitely sets it apart from other solo projects, earlier Animal Collective stuff, or just Animal Collective in general. And it was recorded separately, so they each like kind of sent their parts to each other, and then they recorded, independently and worked independently, so they weren't in the studio together. And I feel like that kind of shines through on a couple of the tracks. So before we get any further, what this album is, again, it's an instrumental album, and the pretty much the entire vibe of this album is acoustic guitar mixed, layered with some very sporadic and sometimes off-tempo electronics, and it's very much an experimental album. The song has 9 songs. It's about 40 minutes long, I want to say, and they don't even feel like songs at certain parts. It feels more of like a sonic soundscape, very much something that would be soundtracking like a weird nature documentary or some bizarre indie like horror film. But there's like moments of beauty in it for sure. The opening track of Hanging Out with a Blueberry Pop, there's like moments where the guitar and the synths and electronics and samples like reach a sort of like harmony, and it's really kind of gorgeous. Another song like Abundant River Zap, where there's moments that almost get to like something reminiscing of a pop melody. But there's other moments where it's the contrast is very jarring. But again, the whole concept of like releasing this album along with like hiking trail suggestion, it very much leads to what I got the most out of the album, which it felt like it was trying to capture energy of like nature. And there's definitely some songs where like, especially as I was listening to it on my second listen as I was driving home from work and kind of like looking out at the mountains here in Colorado and just feeling like an overwhelming sense of bliss. And I think that should not be like understated at all, because while this album is very chaotic, you've got some very jarring moments. Like there's parts where the electronics from Geologist sound like a dial-up machine on top of like very like droning guitar work. There's moments where it's very screeching, very sporadic, very chaotic. But then there's moments where it really settles into like a pretty subtle beauty. And yeah, I it's weird. On my third listen to this, which was just before I recorded this, right before I put my daughter to bed, I was debating about even giving it a score because I don't feel I don't feel like I've listened to it enough. I think that I need to like go camping and actually go on a hike maybe and like listen to it, like put on some good headphones and really try to immerse myself in like what they're trying to create here. It's not a casual listen by any means. I don't think this is something I'd throw on in the background. I got like friends over hanging out. You also have to very much be into this very specific type of music. The guitar work, it reminds me a lot of some of the stuff of like Sung Tongs or even like some earlier Animal Collective, where there's this like really amazing, beautiful melody that you kind of have to pull out of the chaos and the off tempo-ness that Avery can sometimes get to. And I think if Geologist electronics were and samples were a little bit more like on tune, or like, you know, in tune even like with the guitar work, I think that this album would be a lot more palatable for a lot of people. But that shouldn't discredit what they've accomplished here, because it is really quite interesting. Like it's not something that, for the weirdness of Animal Collective, and they've done some weird stuff that I would have expected out of these two members in particular. But it's certainly not unheard of, right? I mean, it reminds me a lot of like Tangerine Reef, which was an album that Animal Collective did that was essentially a soundtrack to like a oceanography documentary. So again, it's got very much that feel of like backing music, backing sounds to something else. And it, even just listening to it on its own, like in my car or at home, it gave me the feeling of like wanting to be out in nature and doing something, even though there were moments of it that were very robotic and very chaotic and had an energy that could only be described as having a bad trip. But yeah, it's interesting. So I am going to give it a score. I think I'm going to give it a B minus, just because I don't know. It could be higher. It honestly could be lower. I do feel like I need to listen to it more. I feel like I need to listen to it like in the middle of a mountain, staring at a stream or something like that. Then maybe my score will change. But this is the one I decided I was going to review this week, so I'm sticking to it. So go check it out if you haven't yet. If you don't listen to Animal Collective, go check out some of their stuff. Merriweather Post Pavilion is a fucking masterpiece. They've got fantastic albums going all the way back. Sung Tongs, I think, is super underrated for like experimental acoustic guitar work. And yeah, they're a lot of fun. This is an interesting offshoot of what they've done, and even like against the rest of like the spin-off stuff that's come out of this project. This is not Doug for sure, but one that I am probably going to be listening to until I figure it out. So that's going to be it for me, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, I will talk to y'all later. Peace.